This video is sponsored by Squarespace, as have been many of the videos of 2024. Maybe let them know how much you appreciate that. Hot coffee on black plastic. That's great. Hi, I'm Adam Ragusia, and you may have seen a video that I made recently about a study that came out, got a lot of press, suggested that an alarmingly large minority of products made out of black plastic contain alarmingly high levels of potentially toxic fire retardants that are used in the black plastic casings of electronic devices that then get recycled into black plastic products often used in food. Hey, no. This is for you to keep you here, okay? It's not for you to eat yet. I was among the throng of media people who covered that particular study that came out in October. And yes, it's true, in more recent weeks, that study has been corrected, and the journal that published it has been, in essence, sanctioned by another entity within the scientific publishing universe. Here's the correction as published in the journal, and it confirms exactly what I told you a few weeks ago, which is that they made a simple math error. They were off by a zero. The result was that they estimated that a problem, one particular aspect of the problem here, is 10 times worse than it actually is, which is a big deal. They did some math to calculate how much cooking with this one particular black cooking spoon would raise your daily average exposure to this particular dangerous fire retardant, BDE209, which has been banned in the US since 2019. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll find out soon why whatever they're using instead is also toxic. And when they were taking the government's reference dose, which I think was an annual sum, they needed to convert it into a daily sum. And when they did that, it looks like they just made a very simple arithmetic mistake. They were off by an order of magnitude. They left off a zero. The result is that it looked like the estimated exposure was approaching the reference dose, which is the poison dose, or the lowest level of poison dose available, when in fact it's actually approaching 1/10 of the poison dose, and that's a really big difference. Now, given the timeline, it is possible that we have influenced the course of events here. It is possible that my video, where I pointed out that math error, is what led other publications to point out the same error, which ultimately led to pressure coming onto the study authors, and they ended up publishing a correction. So it's possible that I did it, that we did it. Or it's possible that other people came to the same conclusions independently. But given the timeline, I totally could have made a video where I crow about how I was right and these damn scientists with their environmental agenda, they're wrong. Hey, don't eat that. I'll tell you right now from experience that such a video, such a thumbnail would have gotten a whole lot of clicks, and probably would have gotten me a whole lot of, what's the word that the kids use it for these days? Clout, right? Would have gotten me a whole lot of social media clout or other kinds of more meaningful real world clout. I don't know, social media clout's gotten pretty real these days. But when you make withdrawals from the bank of common trust, you are using trust for yourself that could instead be used by someone else. And in fact, would maybe be more rightly or better used by someone else. And I think such is the case here. Because if I were to puff myself up and make it seem like I'm the only truth teller in the room and you need to come to the Adam Ragusia channel on the YouTubes in order to find out what's really going on with any food safety research, if I did that, I would be taking trust that really belongs with the people who are actually doing the hard work of doing the damn science, which, yes, involves sometimes making mistakes. There are far too many people in public life nowadays, be they influencers on the internet or politicians in the real world, who are far too eager to poison the well of public trust if it benefits them. If it makes you trust them instead, it makes you believe that they are the only truth tellers and that you have to stick with them in order to not be fooled, which is the one thing people want to avoid more than almost anything else. Is we don't want to get got. We don't want to be a sucker. We don't want to be fooled. And when there's a person who promises to keep us from getting fooled, we have a tendency to latch onto that person. Or the other thing that poisoning the well of public trust does is it makes it so that no one really knows what to believe. It seems like you can't know anything for real. Everything is fake. Everything is compromised in some way. And if you create an information environment where no one believes anything, then you don't have to bother being believable yourself. And let me tell you, that opens up enormous new avenues of rhetorical possibilities. You can say all kinds of incredibly persuasive things if you don't have to worry about about them being true. See, here's what I'm going to try to do instead right now. I'm going to try to persuade you that this still looks like a pretty good paper. It has really, really important information for all of us, and there's no particular reason to distrust the scientific establishment on the basis of this one math error, or on the basis of a whole ton of math errors, because mistakes happen. First of all, let's remind ourselves that the whole reason I was able to spot this error is that they put their arithmetic right here in the paper, like they spelled it out in the body of the paper. They didn't necessarily have to do that. I mean, that's definitely like best practices for scholarly publication, but they probably could have gotten away with just giving an estimated daily reference dose for this one toxin, and then just having a little citation to the government white paper that tells you how they calculated the reference dose. You would have to go into that original source document and look at that math and then do it all over again yourself to try to spot where their mistake was. They showed their work in this case, these scientists did, and that's why we were able to spot the flaw in it. If they wanted to hide it, if they wanted to get one over on you, if they wanted to fool you into thinking that black plastic is way more dangerous than it actually is, so that you would give money to the environmental nonprofits that fund the science that they do, they wouldn't do this. They would try to hide their tracks if they were trying to fool you. Instead, they put it right there. People who are trying to fool you either don't show you their work, or they try to overwhelm you by giving you just reams and reams and reams of primary source documentation as backup for the thing that they're presenting you with. And you would have to go through tons and tons and tons of it in order to spot any mistakes or anything nefarious. That happens all the time. Government does that all the time. When you put in an open records request for some of the government documents that the public is allowed to see, if they want to hide something, they'll give you way too much and they'll fax it to you in like papers that cannot be searched on the computer. They'll do all kinds of things like that to try to get you off the trail. That is not what happened here. These scientists were not trying to fool you. All evidence is to the contrary. Anyway, there's another reason why I still trust these scientists. It's because there's another way that this mistake might have happened that is very, very understandable. And I owe this to a person named Emma Davis, who emailed me this hypothesis. So what they calculated wrong was the reference dose for the neurobehavioral effects that are associated with this particular fire retardant. So that's the minimum dose at which when you poison lab mice with this particular fire retardant, that's when you start to see them doing funny stuff that indicates neurological issues. That's the one they got wrong. But if you look at the reference dose for cancer risk associated with this fire retardant, that just happens to be 1 order of magnitude lower than the reference dose for the neurobehavioral effects. So it's very, very possible that what they calculated was the reference dose for the cancer risk and came up with what would have been the right number for cancer risk. Oh, and by the way, you know what this means? This means that that particular exposure level for this one particular fire retardant absolutely is approaching the reference dose for cancer risk associated with that particular chemical. So it's still kind of a big deal. And this is only one of the particular fire retardants and one of the particular spoons and stuff that they were looking at. They looked at a bunch of other stuff. They got a lot of concerning findings. Now, the plot thickens when you consider the most recent developments, which is that the journal in which this article was published, Chemisphere, has just been delisted by Web of Science. Web of Science is an online tool that people use to gauge the impact of scientific scholarly publications, right? It will tell you how often and where a scientific publication has been cited by other scientists. Gives you an indication of how big of an impact that particular article has had. Really important thing. I used Web of Science all the time back when I had access to university databases and such, back when I had a .edu email address. Don't have it anymore. Can't get Web of Science anymore. I tried to pay for it. They wouldn't. They said we only do scholars and not, jackholes on the internet. Anyway, Web of Science just took Chemisphere and all Chemisphere articles, presumably, out of their system for a failure to meet one or more of their quality criteria, which indicates that maybe this particular error in this particular Chemisphere paper is maybe just the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, I would completely understand if that knowledge kind of rattles your trust in the scientific publishing establishment, but let me tell you that I really don't think it should. Because this is an indication of the system working. Yes, the process by which scientists write their papers and then get them reviewed by their peers and edited by professional editors and then published in professional journals, that process has all kinds of potential for error built into it. And people have been working to reform that process for years, and that process is ongoing. Yes, that process is corruptible by money, by professional ambition, all kinds of things. We have all kinds of examples of scientists getting caught falsifying their data in order to get a bigger grant or to just make themselves feel more important is maybe what it was all about. Who knows? But here's why I still trust science and scientific journals. It's because when something goes wrong, it's a really big deal. It becomes an international news story. People make YouTube videos about it. When other kinds of people, such as influencers on the internet, are caught either getting something wrong or lying, notice how frequently there are not that many consequences associated with that infraction, or if there are consequences, they tend to pass rather rapidly. I mean, look at me. In that video that I made a few weeks ago about the black plastic study, I misspoke twice. I referred to the reference dose as, I think, the highest possible dose that's associated with something going wrong, whereas in fact it's the lowest possible dose associated with something going wrong. All right? I made some kind of mistake like that, and what happened to me? Absolutely nothing. Where have I been delisted? Have I had to issue a correction? No. Now, part of that is because it was obvious the mistake that I was making, right? In context, given context clues, you could tell what I actually meant, and you were less likely to get mad at me about that because it was obvious that I was just sort of talking off the cuff. It's obvious that I'm not some kind of scientific muckety-muck getting peer-reviewed and published in a professional publication. I'm just some idiot on the internet, and so you hold my comments to a lower standard, for better and for worse. Mostly for worse, right? I make mistakes all the time. It's never a deal. I could get away with so many more of them than I do. Usually I have to tell on myself in order to get it out there that I did something wrong. No consequences whatsoever for an influencer on the internet. Tons of consequences for real scientists in the real world, and that's why you should trust them in spite of their mistakes. Now, maybe you look at this same situation and come to completely different conclusions. Maybe you think to yourself, this peer review process must be completely toothless if it can't catch an order of magnitude math error in a major finding in a major paper of major public health significance. And yeah, I kind of see why you look at it that way. But then again, here's what I would say to you. What do you want to do instead? Who do you want to trust instead? What process do you want to trust instead? You just want to trust that one guy on the internet who has captured your attention in the algorithm and maybe captured your trust by making quality content? Totally possible. You want to trust that guy? Maybe he is trustworthy. Maybe I'm trustworthy. That's not a better system. Individual scientists within the scholarly publishing world are also totally trustworthy, and some of them aren't. Individuals are good and bad. In fact, most of us live long enough to be both good and bad at different times in different places in our lives, right? There's good and bad everywhere. What you rely on are systems that create penalties for getting it wrong and rewards for getting it right. And that is what we have in our scholarly publication system that we have built up over decades and decades and decades, and would be very, very foolish to throw away. Because if you start just relying on whoever on the internet you trust, then they are going to be corrupted in the exact same way that academic publishing is already corrupted, except there will be fewer institutional ways of exposing that corruption and punishing that corruption. Another reason you should be more skeptical of me than you should be of scholarly publications is that if I lie or exaggerate in order to get your attention, I get major immediate financial rewards for it. Now, people in scholarly publication, yeah, they can make some bank too by lying or exaggerating, but it's generally not nearly as much money, it's not nearly as immediate, and people who go into that kind of thing generally don't go into it in order to make money. If you want to make money, you do something that is reliably known to make money, and scientific research is not that. I'll be honest and say sometimes when I look at people on the internet, what they remind me of is children who figured out a little bit too early that Santa Claus isn't real. and now they don't believe anything that their parents say because they know their parents lied to them about this one really, really big thing. What else might they have lied to them about? And they're just now figuring out that the world isn't always as it seems. We all need to figure out that the world is not always exactly as it seems, and that's not a reason to distrust everything. You got to grow up, become an adult, and realize that there's no one in charge here. It's just us. It's just people like you and me with all of our own human frailties. And just because someone is wrong, just because they intentionally try to deceive you, that's not necessarily a reason to throw them away. Everyone is wrong sometimes. Everyone is at least a little deceitful sometimes. That's a reason for you to stay frosty, stay skeptical, keep your thinking cap on, but you gotta stay open as well, because for every wrong thing a typical person does, they usually do a whole lot of right things, and you need to be open to that. Just as you're open to the fact that I have something of value to offer you, even though I'm bought and paid for at the moment by the good people at Squarespace, sponsor of this video. You're able to use your big brain and figure out that there's no particular reason to think that Squarespace is compromising the editorial integrity of all of the other really important stuff that I said in this video. The only thing they care about is that I tell you about their design intelligence, which allows you to use cutting-edge technology to come up with a beautiful website design, either through one of their established templates designed by a human, or through something that you make manually yourself, or get a little help with AI. Squarespace doesn't want to give me money in order to allay public concerns about carcinogens in black plastic. They want to give me money to tell you about how you can get people to give you money with your Squarespace site. Be it with Squarespace payments, where you can take people's money via ACH direct debit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay in the UK. Or you can use Squarespace's built-in invoicing tools, where you can auto-generate invoices for people putting in orders on your Squarespace site. Squarespace wants me to tell you about their search engine optimization tools. Every Squarespace website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more to make sure that your site shows up in search results. And they definitely want me to tell you about their business name generator. It all starts with a name, and you can make Squarespace come up with one for you if you want. You can also save 10% off of your first website with Squarespace, or your first registration of a custom domain, by using my code, which is just Ragusia. Squarespace.com/Ragusia, or enter Ragusia at checkout to save 10% off of your first Squarespace site or your first domain name. Thank you, Squarespace. And thank you, science and scientists, for continuing to do the good work even when people on the internet make your life harder. Sorry about that.